Good, and we are live. Welcome. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for tuning in and joining us. I am absolutely thrilled today. It's another beautiful, balmy evening in Bali, approaching the midnight hour. We've had the monsoon rains for the last, 3 months, 4 months, and they look to have abated in the last few days. So God willing, we won't have a thunderstorm or a monsoon deluge tonight. If we do, just so you know, I'm facing the window. I've got to grab my computer and run to the back of that room over there. And we'll see how that flows. I am delighted to be introducing my co-host, who's actually the real host of this show. I'm just delighted to take the opportunity to introduce her to the New Earth Network. And that is, as you all know, because you've all been phoning and writing frantically, Laura Eisenhower, who is an intuitive astrologist, a global alchemist, and cosmic mythologist. And I've added an exopolitician to the long list of credentials. She's a keynote speaker at conventions, symposia, and conferences around the world, which is where I've had the great pleasure and delight to have met her and rubbed noses in the past. She is also notably the great-granddaughter of the 34th President of the United States, the iconic Dwight D. Eisenhower. Laura, so lovely to see you. How are you?
Hey, Sasha. Great to be here. How are you doing?
I'm very good. And I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to slip out and let you do the introduction and bring in our much beloved and much revered guest.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And it's such an honor to be hosting this roundtable discussion with Sasha Stone and Kathy O'Brien. And I'll tell you a little bit about both of them. But we're really just going to get into so much of the positive energy, really focusing on, our spiritual path, our healing process, and how to kind of navigate these, crazy times that we're in. So there's just so much to talk about. And yeah, man, I mean, these two, to have them both in the same place is so beyond thrilling to me, because I admire these two individuals like no other. They're just unstoppable forces and bring, just so much truth, but so much love and a much bigger picture perspective on the spiritual level that is mind blowing, and it's like incredible to watch what they've been doing over the course of so many years, and just so much gratitude to both of them. So I know a lot of people are already familiar with Sasha Stone, but I'll tell you a little bit about him. Sasha Stone is a former rock musician and artist. He grew up in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe throughout the war for independence. He established Humanitad in 1999 and has worked across both NGO and IGO sectors as an outspoken advocate of human rights and natural justice. He has instigated peace initiatives and education programs, lobbied against human rights abuses in different parts of the globe, and continues to prosecute for the protection of vanguard innovators, scientists, and doctors. And there's so much more. And checking out his website, you'll see much more about who he is and what he's doing. And it's incredible. I mean, what a force in the world. Just can't imagine this journey without somebody like you doing all that you're doing. So we'll bring you on, and then we'll introduce, Kathy.
Well, thank you for that. That was the nicest introduction. And can't wait to press this next button and bring in our beloved one and only Kathy O'Brien. Kathy, welcome.
So sweet. You guys are so much love. This is really a wonderful opportunity to bring a lot of truth to light, and light of love. What a powerful convergence. Wow, this is wonderful.
Oh gosh, it's incredible to have you here. And it's been so wonderful to be able to collaborate so much lately. And just when the idea came through and it just kind of fell into place, and then, just the title and what we're, kind of bringing to the table today is incredible and so important. People need these reminders, and it's beyond just reminding. It's just there's just so much confusion and pain, and I'll get into some of those questions. But first, I just want to share a little bit about you. Kathy O'Brien, born in 1957 in Muskegon, Michigan, is a nationally and internationally recognized U.S. government whistleblower on the subject of MK Ultra mind control and healing from it. In 1995, when the U.S. National Security Act was invoked on her testimony for U.S. Congressional Permanent Select Committees on Intelligence Oversight, it was released en masse through her book she wrote with Mark Phillips, Transformation of America. And she became a candidate for MK Ultra mind control due to a dissociative disorder developed from incest. As detailed in Trance, Kathy's pedophile father, Earl O'Brien, sold her into MK Ultra due to his illicit connections into a local Michigan mafia child pornography ring. And I mean, her book and all the information that she has brought forward is jaw-dropping, and nobody has been pioneering in the way that she has been in her journey and recovery, and just the books that she's written, the beautiful love relationship she's had with Mark Phillips. And one of the books, PTSD, Time to Heal, will definitely shed some light on, that healing process, because this is about, the Christ light and entering the Christ light. And yeah, just kind of like starting there. I mean, the healing journey that we're all on, I mean, when we look around though, with weather weapons, just the masking, all these different things that are changing the nature of our society, this is just like an unbelievably critical time, obviously leading to a greater awakening. But where do you feel it's all going as of right now? And how can we even begin to reverse the damage that's already been done? And with inspiring stories like yours, Kathy, I know that, there's some real wisdom and experience there as far as that's concerned. So yeah, maybe we could just start there of like where we are currently and feeling into sort of, the trauma, the confusion, the depression, people not knowing where the future is taking them. What can you kind of shed light on in regards to that? And what are you kind of noticing, and maybe what downloads have been coming through lately?
Well, the strength of the human spirit is so resilient, and people need to be reclaiming that now more than ever, because in so many ways, what I experienced under MK Ultra mind control with the division of my mind, the deliberate division and compartmentalization, is not unlike what's going on in the world with the divisiveness and the separation of people. When you have that much divisiveness, it erodes continuity of being. It erodes an ability to be able to express true to soul and live the love that we are. It is why mind control is the primary tool of ushering in the new world order, because it creates that kind of divisiveness that makes a person where they can't think beyond their own moment, and therefore they lack compassion, they lack love. And then with adding the COVID mind control mask, this is a virus that's happening in our world, it's divided people even more physically, where they have to be 6 feet apart or be 6 feet under. And that divisiveness has caused a very narrow focus within everyone, not unlike what I experienced under MK Ultra mind control, because under mind control, the traumas I endured made my conscious mind take flight, while my subconscious mind was easily led. And all I could do is exactly what I was programmed and told to do. I was totally robotic. I had no capacity to stand up for anything that I believe in life. I had no capacity to live my own love, my own life's purpose. I lost all that through the traumas that were imposed on me. And I healed anyway. Through everything I endured, I'm okay because of the love and the truth that Mark Phillips, an intelligence insider, brought to me and rescued me out of my victimization, handed me the keys to my own mind. And I'm sharing those keys now in PTSD Time to Heal, because each and every one of us needs the capacity to expand our free thought again, to reclaim our strength of spirit, our innate humanity, soul compassion, and begin living the love we are. World peace begins within. And I found that, and I'm sharing what I learned on such an intricate level with everyone who will open their ears and open their heart and open their mind to realize that we have been hindered for some of the most beautiful aspects of our living.
So beautiful. It's just incredible, your strength and your pure love. And I just so grateful to be connected with you. It shifted everything when we started to, get in touch again. And I'm just so grateful for all that you are and just our connection as well. So Sasha, what are your thoughts? I mean, when you kind of wake up every day and, you're both like have so much spiritual strength and power. What are you, kind of noticing? I mean, obviously they're still able to use weather weapons. They seem to be quite successful in getting everybody to kind of comply and be obedient. I mean, how are you kind of processing everything, and what sort of downloads have been coming through lately? And then we'll talk, of course, about, the Christ energy and your connections with that. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, for me, the whole of reality has really come into such incredible stark focus in the last year. I'd say I would actually say the last, since the onset of this crowning moment, or the crowning glory moment of our civilizational dystopia, ignorance. It really, the onset of Corona COVID and the pantomime and the vaudeville that we've been subjected to as a species has brought into stark contrast for me three things. And I'll circle back in a minute to explain why, where, and how Kathy and Mark Phillips were an integral part in that revelation for me years ago. But in the first instance, let me just say, to answer your question, I've seen everything break down civilizationally into a kind of alchemization process where the primary elements are just like falling on the table. And what are those primary elements that have brought us into this interspecies civilizational malfunction, heart attack, galactic dystopia on this blessed planet, Gaia or Tara? And I've broken it down into spells and bonds and poisons, because a spell and a bond is also a poison. But to break it down into what afflicts and assails the human species, and not just the human being. There are trillions of different species if we count the different microbial flora and fauna and all the mammals and fish and all the rest of it. But the spells are connected to the thrall of what I would call the light of Atlantis, the fallen light of Atlantis, so to speak. The last great seeding or epoch of the human experiment, which brought us to a kind of glorified end where we systemically fucked up. And then a great deluge somewhere occurred, which is both apocryphal and also evidenced forensically through archaeology and so on, and all the creation myths, pretty much all the peoples of the world. And that was, you're an astrologer, you'd have more of an idea of when that was. I have an idea. It was a semi-arc pass of the grand procession of the equinox about 13,000 years ago. But the bottom line is we've been in the thrall of that earlier failed seeding. And there was a legacy there of the fallen light of Atlantis, and we're needing to awaken from within that. I see the bonds are connected to the shackles that bind, which in the modern context are things like government, things like the Catholic Church, things like the doomsday of 1066, the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, and the onset of the feudal barons and then the imperial crowns of Europe and all around the world, in point of fact, which led to a kind of monocultural nightmare of the United Nations, all governments being corporations masquerading as fictions, indenturing billions of souls through birth bonds and registrations and permits and penalties and tabulations and all that systems crap that fictionalized the living and turned us into dead bonds since 1066. And the formation of Switzerland, of course, the franchise really of the Canaanite ritualists all the way down through the Judeans and the Romans and the pharaohs of ancient Egypt and the Babylonians. All of that ultimately fomented into, catalyzed into the weaponization of the true Christic or Christed message, which came to us about 2,000 odd years ago by blessed Yeshua. Whether that's an archetypal story or not, we know that that's the guiding principle. That's the lodestar to our civilizational kind of remit. And then we're led in the last 500 years, courtesy of the Vatican, into monstrous blood cult and sacrifice of the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin peoples of the world, which has engendered us again into the thrall of a dream spell that we've created incarnationally. And has brought us all to this end of days apocalyptic scenario where in the last calendar year, we had to be crowned in our civilizational dystopia. There had to be a crowning moment where the government, the fiction, the great aggregated fiction of our civilizational hologram had to come up and really try to destroy the spiritus maximus of the human. And that's what we're seeing. So the government is 90+% out of control. It's rogue. It's in breach and violation of every mandate, every oath, every treaty, every compact ever attributed to it by the living souls. But that's still what holds the day, because apparently might is right. And that's part of the thrall that we need to now awaken within. Kathy O'Brien and a Mark Phillips, but particularly Kathy in this case, in my view, is an avatar. Is a soul who determines, and I think I've mentioned this to Kathy in the past in my writings to her, that I'm absolutely certain of this in my own mind. I don't even really require the corroboration because I'm that arrogant. But she represents to me that Christic element, an avatar that falls into the world, into the belly of the beast, into the void, into the abyss, into the grip of Cronus. And there has the strength, the fortitude, the spiritual dimension to be able to herself awaken from within the dream spell. And God knows, there is hardly a living subject in the world who has been more subjected to the pointy end of that stick of mind control. When you talk about Project Monarch, MK Ultra, the stuff that Kathy is a pioneer in revealing to the world, I still say that she represents that Christic light. And that's why I think calling this Into the Christed Light makes a lot of sense. The poisons I was referring to earlier are to do with the transhumanism that's going on, the artificial intelligence that's going on, the 5G complex that is afflicting us. But all of the glyphosates and phosphates and fluorides and bariums and strontiums and, all of these goddamn patented synthetic molecules, which have been put into play precisely in order to poison us from the inside. So the dream spell comes at us from out there, and from the inside, our genome is under a systemic and endemic attack. So that's brought us to where we're at in this conversation, and why, speaking to what you said, Laura, and what Kathy represents, and what I hope we represent to some extent, the Christed light or the Christic light, the diamond within the coal that is being born now in the year 2021, to me, it's everything.
So beautifully put. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, this is really what it's all about. This is, when we just begin to discover that divine blueprint and who we truly are, and the process that one needs to, kind of go through in order to get to the true organic light. I mean, the dark night of the soul, going into, a place of needing to really deprogram and reconnect and rethink, everything, to have that kind of, ego death, to, be reborn into the fullness of, our true divinity and what it means to be human, to be stewards and guardians of this beautiful earth that we're on, and to protect the children, and to call out these crimes against humanity and demand justice, and not stop at anything less. And you two are just such incredible examples and forces when it comes to that. So, I mean, religion has made it very, very difficult for people to connect with the Christ energy. And I always find it interesting that sometimes people who are religious aren't always the most kind or compassionate people. They can be very sort of condemning or like caught in their own sort of, I guess, cult or group, to the point where they might not appreciate somebody else's spiritual sovereignty or expression of how, or relationship with the Christ energy in their own divine sovereign way, if you know what I mean. How do you kind of relate to the Christ energy in your own lives? And what have you, I mean, what do you sort of see kind of happening with an awakening, maybe happening with those that don't think they need to be awakened because they're already feeling that almost religious, I don't want to say superiority, but they might not really feel like there's a next level, if you know what I mean. So I guess starting with the question of, how has this energy worked for you in your life? How do you experience it? And then we can, maybe move to that other one, later. But I don't know. Do you who wants to jump in on that one first?
Soul has no gender. It has no social status. It has no religion. Soul is our innate spirit within us, by my definition and my perception. And nothing scares the people who are wanting to control the world and control the minds of the masses. These power mongers, there's horrible, pedophilic, satanic, dark forces that are seeking to control our world, want to suppress the strength of the human spirit, because that's what they fear most. They fear it because they don't understand it. It's not anything they can relate to. It's where we're strong. It's where we win. They cannot possess the human spirit. What they can do is suppress it. And that was my experience under mind control. Under MK Ultra mind control, I had no free thought, no free will, no soul expression, no capacity to live my strength of spirit. The divisiveness that we're feeling in the world, religious or otherwise, is an illusion. The same way that the compartmentalization in my own brain was an illusion that could be overcome. I overcame all that and pulled my head together and was able to gather my strength of spirit and live the love that I am. Everybody can do that. It cannot be suppressed any more than we allow it to be. There are ways to be able to reclaim that soul expression and to rise out of it. The criminals that were in control of my mind on the MK Ultra mind control project were following a computer generated program. The original artificial intelligence, however we want to look at it. So technologically, they were already following that. And we're looking at now, oh my gosh, the thought of artificial intelligence taking over things or whatever. No, it can't, because we have the strength of the human spirit. What that means is when we have that soul expression, we have more than just the linear thinking that they're following on that computerization. That lack of soul, that lack of compassion has just such flat thinking. It's evil, it's mean, it's wicked, but it's flat. We have wisdom. We have the depth, the height, the capacity to rise above it. And like Mark always said, wisdom outthinks a criminal mind every time. So all we need to do is be able to gather our strength of spirit and realize that they cannot contain us any longer. That realization alone is a truth that will make us free.
I want to add to that I think what you're describing also is the Daniel in the lion's den, a metaphor, because it in my experience, Kathy, and I know from reading your account that there are similar shared dynamics there, that when there is a real sort of existential threat to you, in a sense that creates the backdrop and the texture to define the inner light. And without that existential threat, whether it's a shape-shifting draconian or it's a bullet in a gun at the temple or whatever, it's that background texture, that archetypal horror that is the very thing that catalyzes the genesis of the Christed light internally, and then is the thing that brings you into the fore. I mean, did you find, I wanted to ask you, what was the defining moment? And I know that Mark Phillips was the defining archetype and the defining character and what he represented. But within yourself, absent Mark, when was the moment at which the revelation internally occurred, which has always got to do with internally one turning to face oneself for the first time in a perfect geometry of now? And that's the bit I'm interested to hear from you. Was there a particularly defining moment that you can recall?
There was, once I had reclaimed free thought and remembered all the things that I had been programmed and tortured to forget, I was so mad at what had been done to the world. I was absolutely beyond outraged at what had been done to my daughter. I was so disgusted with the plan that is behind controlling populations for the New World Order that it was almost immobilizing. My daughter was taken as a political prisoner into the custody of the system in an effort to control me and to suppress her, which was furthering the nightmare after we had been free. And I cried and cried at the injustice of it all, and then realized I was drowning in my own tears, and realized that negativity is immobilizing. Bitterness, hatred, those are their energies. That's what they're wanting to generate in this world. They're wanting to generate negativity because they feed off it. That's why they're pedophilic. That's why they abuse children, because they feed off the energy of the torture that it is for a child to be sexually abused. These are adverse energies, and I am not going to feel that energy anymore. So I was making a decision at that point, what I could do to mobilize myself. And first I had to realize who I am. Why am I here? Why did I survive? And ask the usual questions I suppose that people look at some point in their life. And people would tell me, well, you have to love yourself. You have to forgive yourself and all this. And it was a strange thought to me. And I couldn't grasp the concept of doing daily affirmations to tell myself I love myself. It just wasn't working. So after all I had been through and been forced to participate in under mind control, I realized that now that I had free thought, I was responsible for my actions going forward. And I would use who I am and my life's purpose to drive that. And I found who I am, and I found all that on the most base level, because I couldn't take an idea of myself. I think ego is people's perception of self from outside themselves, and I certainly couldn't use any of that. So I had to find it from within, and I found it at the base core level of my energy, and that energy is love. So it was so easy. Like, okay, I'll live the love I am. And it's so much easier than trying to love myself from the outside in. I just live the love I am every day. And that is very empowering. That allows me to use that strength of the human spirit to make a positive difference in this world by bringing truth to light, so that no one has to go through the horrors of what my daughter and I endured, and the horrors of what I know is planned in this new world order dominance effort, where they're attempting to create a slave society where we all do exactly what we're told to do, just like I had to under their mind control. And they make all the money. It's greed, power, control. I can't even relate to that form of thinking. The only way of thinking that I can relate to is from my innate being, and that is one of bringing peace, love, inner strength back into the world. Freedom. Freedom is essential for all of that, and freedom unites. Truth unites us, and knowing our own truth is what's going to allow us to be able to unite on a global scale. Because it's like the saying that be the change you want to see in the world. I want to see the world unite. And what that takes is for someone to unite their own thinking within their own mind through the methods that Mark taught me that are in PTSD Time to Heal. And by applying those simple methods and living the oneness and the peace and the joy and the love and the strength of spirit, that is when we can begin to reestablish justice, reestablish freedom, and take back the peace and joy of our lives that has been eroding so rapidly in 2021.
I mean, your journey and what you've brought forward to me is like the most important thing in the world. I mean, it's a lot to try and put into words, but just the whole idea of override frequency or the 100th monk. When somebody's able to overcome something, it does something to the collective consciousness. It helps souls that otherwise might not know how to access that Christ energy. It gives them some direction. It helps them to find that center. And it shows that power of spirit is more powerful than dark technology, these poisons, and all the extreme traumas that, you and your daughter went through. And I mean, this is the light and hope of the world. If you're able to be who you are from all of that and be just a beacon of love and light and healing and truth, and give people, the tools, it's like, to me, you embody sort of the victory of humanity because of it. And I feel that there's nothing that we're up against that we somehow can't handle. And a story like yours and the kind of work that you do, Sasha, I mean, this is why I'm like, I can't even believe I'm here with both of you, because it's like, this is such a big deal for people to get in touch with, to pull them out of doubt, fear, anxiety, and pain, to just know that, it is possible to connect with these energies and correct these reversals and this level of control, which is so deep and dark. I mean, the level of dark technologies and the AI part of it. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like we just have to drop the energetic cords and the attachments to these sub-identities. And once that begins to collapse, I mean, don't you feel it kind of nullifies and neutralizes the ability for these dark technologies to even work, and even to the point where the weather weapons won't be able to work anymore, because we're elemental beings. And once we're really empowered, we'll be a part of that. Just having more of that avatar kind of connection with the elementals and the elemental kingdoms rising, that we're really a part of nature. We're really participating and co-creating this, organic ascension timeline. I mean, how do you kind of see the ascension process? So the matrix needs to collapse. We need to free ourselves of being hooked into that net. And once a person does undo from that, I mean, you kind of see that, that collapse for others and helps them through the gates. Or, we all have kind of unique soul journeys, so it's not going to be the same. Some people are contracted to maybe stay a little bit longer and maybe a more dark, timeline. But I mean, how do you see sort of the matrix sort of collapsing so that we can begin to experience better news every day instead of just heartbreak after heartbreak, like what we're hearing in Texas? It's like, where we'll just really start to hear, amazing things. To me, this is the good news. This is the amazing news in the world, is what we're able to co-create and our own personal journeys. But yeah, I'm not quite sure where I'm going with that, but
let me jump in, because I kind of do know what you're going at, I think, and I understand the way that you're formatting the thought form, and I appreciate it. We're all jointly manifesting the sort of fucked upness of everything, and that's the point. The holographic field of reality only reflects back to us essentially that which is unresolved within self. And I will add by saying, unless you are coming here as a bodhisattva, as an avatar, in which case you are doing it, there is a different soul covenant at work there. It's not as though you're working through your own karma and dharma shit. You've actually elected to take a deep dive, come through the void, again, into the belly of the beast, in order to act as a catalyzing element for that meta transformation. But in the main, with the universal laws that prevail, the holograph is a perfect inverse reflection or diametric proportionate reflection to the unresolved aspects within a self individually, and then the collective unconscious. So the fact of the matter is that everything in the here and now is absolutely divinely anointed and appointed and perfect. That is not to say we cannot transmute it and transcend it into ever higher overtones. Yes, we can. That's where divine will comes in. That's where phase conjugation of the individuated, actualized spirit in a being enters that Christed quanta, moves into coherence with the divine flame, which is the universal mind. And then that individual is now moving into the lateral plane, radiating, which you were speaking to earlier, Laura, the morphogenesis. That's the lateral plane in flaming up. And it's very, very contagious. And that's the real virus, of course, that is taking shape in the world. So the more the diametric proportion and the degree to which the external threat of this bullshit corona COVID fantasy, the more stark that archetype looms in the holograph, and the less that you and I identify with that mythos, the more we are actually taking the prana, the life force, into the lateral plane to awaken our brothers and sisters. So I see fearlessness and timelessness being the same thing, and them both being the divine prerogative of the actualized human being. Because fearlessness is when we simply become divine capacitors of that Christed energy, and we inflame and radiate one another. And that's it. That's where it's going. So I would say we have perfectly structured a means by which we escape the proverbial matrix. And that is by collectively projecting the worst aspect of that matrix in the field, which is really, the gibbering sock puppet in Capitol Hill right now. And the venal little turd, Anthony Fauci, who has supreme kind of command and control over the biome of every living soul on the planet, apparently. And, the Silicon Valley turds as well, and the big tech owners and comptrollers, most of them sort of probably, lost, partially ensouled, if ensouled at all. How many of them gargled baby's blood in the basement is ultimately a matter for them. The fact is that good humans, good Adamites all around the world can now see it, touch it, feel the fiction that was driving us subliminally for millennia, since the Canaanite ritualists were tossing their babies onto the lap of Moloch, for God's sake. It's a good thing. It's all a good thing as I see it. Kathy, what are your comments there?
Yeah. Awareness is the first step towards positive necessary change. That's for sure. Truth really makes us free. And truth frees us from fear. Fear is the number one basis for mind control. So when people overcome their fears, they're going to be able to have the fearlessness that you so eloquently stated, and be able to start making the positive difference, live the love they are, and bring light back into this world. But fear is the primary basis of mind control, because our brains automatically respond to fear by compartmentalizing memory of abuse, of the horror. The stronger the trauma, the stronger that it is compartmentalized in the brain. And when we understand how our brains respond to trauma, we'll realize that when trauma occurs in our world, when fearfulness is imposed on the world through mind control masked as a virus, we can realize, oh, that's what it is. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. So we need to realize that the fear that is being generated is being used to control us. And by raising that fear in us, it's creating the energy that they feed off from. They only have as much power as we let them have. And by overcoming our fear, they can't have that power anymore. So the best way to overcome the fear is through the kind of healing methods that I used to reclaim my free thought after decades of torturous MK Ultra mind control. And that's through writing it out. And why this works is because if you pick up a pen and you're writing on a piece of paper, it takes the logic part of the brain. Again, we're talking about brain function. And when you begin writing and shift the horrible, emotionally incomprehensible fear over to logic, where it can be consciously dealt with, you're able to overcome it better. So by moving a pen and shifting it over to the logic part of the brain, you're writing it out, and then you're looking at it and having a conscious realization of, oh, that is what I'm afraid of. At that point, write out a solution in conjunction with the fear that you just wrote out. Because if you have to write out a solution to that, you're expanding your thinking beyond being bogged down in the immobility of the fear to be able to rise above it and reclaim that soul expression. Because I spell solution with an S-O-U-L. You do it with soul. And by having that capacity, that will help us overcome the fear. If everybody just picked up a pen and started writing out what they're afraid of most, and were able to then write a solution to that, that would be an enormous victory and a giant step forward towards being able to reclaim our lives and our life's purpose from the clutches of a handful of dark criminals who are hell-bent on controlling us all by fear, not only so they can feed off it, but so that we are immobilized and they can have their power and their control like they seek. I cannot figure out why. You mentioned Fauci, and it's like, why is everybody following a self-appointed expert? He's not an expert on that. I know from experience what our human bodies are capable of in healing. We have so much that we're capable of within ourselves when we realize the magnitude of the power of our own minds over our bodies. We'll realize that we don't even have to have a virus if we choose not to. We can rise above it. In MK Ultra mind control, for example, military special forces is programmed with no time to bleed. And that's so they could take a bullet and keep on going and have the superhuman strength, the superhuman capability. If that can be controlled in our minds by outside influence, imagine what we can do with that, with our own innate strength of spirit from within ourselves. Mark was so excited at that concept. That was why he was studying mind sciences and watching how the martial artists who use these amazing strengths from within and have their self-control, how martial artists were able to use that, whereas a programmed special forces person, for example, you put the two together and martial arts wins every time, because our innate human spirit driving what we're capable of is so much more powerful than any outside influence could ever be. When we take that knowledge, and it is an absolute of our brains, this information has been suppressed like all important truths that we have a right to know and a need to know. But we need to know that we have it within ourselves to be able to refuse to, like, instead of special forces having no time to bleed, we have no time for a virus. And then you don't get it. I rarely ever get sick with anything because I know this part of my brain, and I choose not to have that hindrance in my life. There's too much good to be doing in the world. There's too much love to be bringing. The whole world needs a hug. So there's no time for being sick, and to have to put a mask over it instead, and create all this fear, 6 feet apart, 6 feet under, divide everybody. That is the polar opposite of everything that we actually need to know from within ourselves once we gain our strength of spirit. That is one fear that can be overcome by knowledge and realizing the solutions that are within us all. There's so many levels to healing, from the scientific, physical end on how our brains react, to being able to realize life's purpose and the beauty and the magnitude of what it's all about. Mind control works because people have an innate fear of death.
Yes.
And they only fear it because they don't know it. I have been on the edge of death so much and peeked over that edge that I have absolutely no fear. I am not going to rush to it because life has its purpose and its timing and its rhythm. So I live that. And I love life. I celebrate the freedom to live it every day. But I live it with no fear of death because it's all a celebration process of the beauty of the spirit that we are. And that oneness of spirit that we all share is where we truly will unite. And it's the most beautiful, empowering thing to know. And if people just overcame their fear and were able to start standing up for everything that really truly matters to them, like stopping human trafficking, stopping the occultism, stopping the pervasiveness of fear being imposed on in society, stop the injustices that are going on. If we start making that stand, we have it within us to do it. And it all starts with just realizing and acknowledging that we have that capacity within us, and pick up a pen and make it happen.
Smells like freedom to me, baby.
Yeah.
So you guys, what do you think though, like with everybody kind of getting the jab and just all this manipulation of you can't go back to work and just people really just not being, prepared. I mean, don't you feel, the Christ power is strong enough to help undo the damage of the jab, I guess you could say, because people talk about the mark of the beast or it's irreversible, and people report, feeling a loss of like God connection, and just, I don't know, just the whole modification of DNA. Like when you see kind of how rampant this is and how many people are going in that direction, how does that kind of make you feel about where they're heading? And do you feel part of your mission and role is to address how to maybe counteract the negative effects of this next level of assault, or like what kind of comes through when you think about it? Because some people are like, oh, it's a lost cause, there's nothing we can do, it's irreversible. I mean, I just feel like I can't accept that. Isn't the Christ energy strong enough?
I'd love to speak to a bit of that. I mean, the fact that 7 billion human souls or thereabouts have been now chemically altered and weaponized, and we know this forensically. And there are a great many doctors and scientists. I've worked with probably 80% of the leading figures in the last year, as you may know. I mean, Robert Kennedy and the work that he's been exposing in the vaccination program, Dr. Rashid Buttar, Dr. Judith Mikovits, who worked for Fauci for years and ended up in prison when she tried to blow the whistle on what was going on in the basement. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Christiane Northrup, Professor Dolores Cahill, all of these extraordinary figures. These are proper healers, proper doctors, proper epidemiologists and virologists and what have you. And they're the ones to speak to the existential threats facing us at the level of our blood chemistry, and the confluence of, again, glyphosates, aluminum, and fluoride being the three primary ones that catalyze inside the human body, apparently trigger 6 separate chemical responses, ultimately finding their way to the pineal and then locking the pineal. We all know that fluoride was introduced into the planetary municipal water supplies in the 1960s, courtesy of the United Nations. And we all know why that was. We all know that that was calcifying the pineal and helped trying to dumb down the planet. Kathy's own story is written into those grotesque sort of experiments of the franchise of Dr. Mengele, all eugenics, all tampering with the mind, body, and fabric of soul. And the fact is that this slow incremental tiptoe of the poisons into all of our bodies has weaponized us. So we're at that point anyway. But I still say it is when there is an existential threat at the level of the human gene expression, that is when the true human will arise. And that's happened in the past. We only need to look at the HIV/AIDS scam, because that was also something put into the program that was designed actually to cull the blackest of the black genome. It failed ultimately. It caused all sorts of havoc, which is a Luciferian wet dream in the meantime. But it was very much an early test bed for what was going to be happening. And the fact of the matter is that those children back in the 1980s and 90s who were born in Africa to mothers and fathers who themselves contracted HIV/AIDS and then died, those kids went into homes, and they're all alive. They're all alive. They're all in their 30s and 40s. And not only are they alive, they are miraculous human specimens. They've got the most extraordinary biome that cannot get sick. They can't be afflicted by a common cold. And so what actually happened was that endemic threat at the black genome sub-Saharan African level led to a morphogenetic telegraphy, a communication at the subtle dimensional level, communicating the threat from that gene to the next gene, brothers, fathers, mothers, and the next thing, the human gene in that genetic makeup did jujitsu, flipped the devil off its back, reformatted itself, and started to continue procreating. And now there's no problem essentially with the HIV/AIDS and H1N1 and SARS, and all of these have variously been test beds to try to tap in and get to the quanta in the human genetic expression. Because what Kathy was saying earlier, I think, is entirely true. They hate and despise the humanness and the Christed element of humanity. But at the same time, whether these Babylonian wizards and their pointy hats know it or not, they are also desperately trying to get to that thing. That's why they're drinking the blood. That's why they crave the adrenalized blood. That's why they are trying to delve in and splice and dice, because they are desperately lost and also seeking their own way home. They don't even know that. And I say again, that the absolution element, the redemption and absolution element is now everything. And again, I will also say that that's, for me, the marked success of Kathy's story. It speaks, yes, we talk in terms of love, but for me, it's the absolution bit. And that's the bit I think we should all be exploring now as a species. I genuinely don't hate Anthony Fauci or Bill Gates or Bill Clinton or, any of these motherfuckers. I don't hate any of them. I mean, I just look at them with a deep, cosmic, soulful sense of despair and almost pity, and think, God, what a derelicted, ransacked fabric of soul you inhabit, and how deeply turbulent that must be, and what awful night sweats you must go through, really, And I think that also helps to put it into context, step back and go, you people who control the coin, control the money, control the time, control the systems, control the functions of the world through heisting governments and the churches and all of that, no power resides there at all. All the power resides with us.
Man, you have a way to put words together, like, it's just incredible. Like, just the way you string words together is just phenomenal. You're just genius in that way. Yeah, so I mean, it's almost like we are learning to be senior to all lower entities. I mean, this is the mastery that we are up against, and it's almost like, no matter what gets thrown, there is this ability to move to the next level of consciousness or adaptivity and acclimation within the physical vessel, based in connection to 0 point unified field, the Christ Center, Christ Sophia. I mean, and this is where people think miracles are maybe just a kind of a fluke, or it's maybe only some are able to make miracles happen. But to me, isn't it a natural state that we're able to just even like alchemize things and transmute things, like the whole concept of lead into gold, just in our own being to become Christed beings, let alone how we can alter the energy signatures of things that are very detrimental and toxic or based in distortions or mind control. That, that power cannot be duped, and the AI cannot quite reach that.
It can never reach it, can never touch the quanta of the human soul. Try as it might, and God knows it's tried over millennia. No, it can never tap into the Christed element of the human being. No chance in hell. Kathy is a living example of that. I don't know that you can try to butcher the fabric of soul more than she and her ilk have suffered. So that's the short answer. The short answer is we are a rip-roaring success in the 21st century. We're actually sitting here despite a quadrillion-dollar enterprise in Silicon Valley trying to censor us and stop us, despite a quadrillion-dollar pharmaceutical and agrochemical industry trying to poison us, despite a quadrillion-dollar government and monotheistic religious programming trying to cult program us away from these kinds of conversations. We just keep coming back.
I love it. Soul is stronger than genetics, and the best that they can manipulate is not enough to control any of us ultimately when we realize that particular strength. And in my case, I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family. So it was thought that I would have the genetics for abusing children, for pedophilia. After 3 generations, usually a behavior becomes more autogenic. In my case, it was no part of my being, which I believe is why they used mind control on me, because whatever that innate difference that I had, my spirit would not accept abuse of a child in any way. Pain is a negative, and it generates a fear. So how can that possibly be a good thing for a child? The criminals that are attempting to alter us genetically and otherwise want to do so to suppress the strength of the human spirit. It's their ultimate goal. I heard discussions on this subject at Bohemian Grove, and this is in Transformation of America, my testimony for Congress, where the AIDS was being discussed. And it was not so much that it was a racial issue that was being discussed at all. Instead, it was an attempt to stop procreation of humanity in favor of artificial intelligence and to create a completely different robotic kind of society that does not have the strength of the human spirit. Well, since pedophilia suppresses the strength of the human spirit through the inability to have free thought, to think, to have free will and soul expression, using genetic alteration or whatever they used in AIDS was another attempt to suppress just natural procreation and alter the way that we would go forward naturally in our lives, in our bodies. In my case, I was forced to work black ops under MK Ultra mind control back in those days, and had many trips to Haiti, which was the ultimate proving ground of the AIDS and where it was introduced so hard. And I was completely immune from it, to the point where even Hillary Clinton knew that. It was accepted knowledge around DC that I was immune from it. What did they give me that I was immune from it? I have no idea. They probably had a cure all along or whatever. The fact is, I was immune from that. And the fact is that my soul being stronger than my own genetics, that was supposed to have been a propensity for pedophilia, which is the ultimate trauma to me, shows how strong that we really are. As this vaccine is being introduced into the population and people are waking up and saying no, I hear from more people who are absolutely refusing to take. I'm certainly not going to subject myself to that. It was known in DC back in the 80s that that vaccines were already tainted and they had an ulterior motive and purpose. It's just something that is not even in consideration. But for those people who are moving from one fear to think that they can use the vaccine, that's something too that can be overcome, because again, soul is stronger than genetics. We have our strength of spirit. I don't find a hopelessness in it. I foresee another failed attempt to suppress that within us all, because as these times look so dark to so many people who are just seeing it for the first time, it's been going on my whole life behind the scene. And it's very encouraging to know that people are finally seeing this dark aspect of society being imposed on us, because humanity has a dark faction that does not need to be controlling us. They think they need to be. We know they don't need to be, because there's more of us than them. They're a small handful creating an illusion of power and control, forcing their flat linear thinking controls on us from every aspect they can possibly think of, and it's still not working. The more they do it, the more people are waking up. It's like that now that they're seeing the darkness and seeing it, it's the awareness is the first step towards positive necessary change. It's the realization within ourselves that we are not only the majority, but we have all the power, because love is the most powerful force in the universe. They know that. That's what they're scared of. So people, we just need to gather our strength of spirit, realize the truth. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. I'll say it again. And truth makes us free. So we need to have more and more opportunities like this to get the truth out there, which is happening in spite of, as you said, Sasha, the big tech efforts to suppress truth is still rising. And people are waking up en masse. It's happening more than ever. Having an inside view of mind control, seeing it imposed on the world, having an inside view of knowing what it's like to wake up from mind control and gather that strength of spirit. I'm seeing that in the world. And this is like such an exciting time to be alive that I wish Mark was here to see it too, because he would celebrate that. He knew it was coming and he was so excited. It was something we both looked forward to. The great awakening that's going on in the world. And it's such a beautiful thing. So whatever is being imposed on us cannot contain us. We are far stronger than all.
Did you see any of these techniques coming? I mean, when the last year started unfolding, did it ring any bells in your head and you thought, oh, hang on, this is classic, this is meta MK Ultra going on?
Absolutely, from the get-go, right down to the masks, because masks are a part of MK Ultra mind control. It's used especially in the genetic mind control project Monarch that I was raised in. And it's used to, cover the mouth, suppress the voice, silence the voice. It creates depersonalization, which is another aspect of mind control. And it inhibits oxygen to the brain, necessary oxygen for critical thinking. So as soon as I saw the mask introduced, I thought first thing how my compassion for the Chinese people, anytime I've seen images of the whole population walking around in these masks, I always had so much compassion for them, knowing full well what that mask represented and what it actually does to the human psyche and to the brain itself. So I was very concerned. I thought of Michael Jackson and how it was used on him in the same MK Ultra project I was raised in. So much compassion for the reality that he was not able to heal like I did and to reclaim his strength of spirit before his passing, because he never got to realize and live his own life's purpose and what he would have freely chosen for himself had he been free to do that. And so I see the magnitude of what was used in MK Ultra on my own daughter, who was trafficked in a mask from the age of 2, was so outrageous that I was just screaming from the get-go, don't wear the mask, don't wear the mask, it's mind control. And I've been relentless in shouting out that truth. I just wish that I had a stronger voice in it. So, again, be the change you want to see in the world. So I've never worn a mask, not one time. I've never been, approached about it. I've never been
Wow.
hassled about it. I've never had any issue with it whatsoever. I've never been well, I was denied entrance into a store one time, and it was great because I just won't shop there anymore. I don't have to. There's other places to go where people can breathe free, and be free. So I've never worn a mask, and instead, people respond to me like, "All right, a smile." They're so happy to see a smile because we need to see smiles. We need to have that human interaction. The whole world needs a hug. If only everybody could just embrace that thought. If, like you and I did, Laura, when we very first hugged and your necklace stuck in me and we were stuck together for such a long time in that beautiful embrace. The whole world needs to get stuck in that embrace. They need to have that experience. So, by living the freedom and never wearing a mask, it has inspired so many people to take off their masks. I have never been out since this started when people haven't taken their mask off.
We should go a little further. We should go a little further than just take masks off. We should pick up sticks and stones and go for these syndicated devils who've tried to deplete the immune system of 7 billion humans and caused untold, when the audit is done, the untold desecration to human health and wellness that has happened in the last year because of these demons. I think we need remedy. I don't think it's enough just to take the masks off. I think we need to round these devils up. I really do.
Yeah. So, yeah, how do you kind of see that unfolding? I mean, it just seems like they're just going to create more mandates. I mean, obviously there's something going on in the background connected to positive military and galactic beings or higher, dimensional beings. I mean, when you kind of tap into sort of the larger picture as far as how to kind of undo this thing that's trying to overtake and suffocate everybody, and I mean, do you just see like just a big breakthrough, or just systematically just these corrupt leaders being taken down one by one? Or it's not good to predict, but I mean, just kind of thoughts about that.
Well, the fiction has already revealed itself. So again, the fiction is now in stark contrast for the first time in our civilization history. That's why I drew a straight line from Canaanite ritualism and Molechite worship, thousands of years ago to today. This is the net result of thousands of years of that stuff, and how it all emerged into a perfect synthesis of witchery and evil empire, so to speak. So no, it's the game is doing unto itself in divine geometry and perfectly proportionate to the collective soul invocation. But more than that, a lot more than that. People are seeing their own defined journey, spirit, soul trajectory, and disidentifying from the fiction, stepping away from it. So you're going to see an exodus, huge exodus from cities and from kill grids. That's going to happen as a net result of what's going on the last year. People sitting in their tenement blocks and what have you, just want the soil under their feet. They just want, nature. They want to get back to nature. Now, the consolidated evil empire through the United Nations, which seeks an Agenda 2030, a harmonization of our world into a monster land grab where only the parent corporation owns all the land and all the dirty little humans have been hustled into kill grids. That's the fantasy of the Tavistockian, Fabianist, Luciferian. Fair enough. That's his fantasy. It's not mine. It's not yours. Actually, it's not the fantasy of 7.5 billion human souls. There are enough enablers of that Luciferic mindset, alas, and we see them voting for people like Joseph Biden, for instance, which is a classic example of the liberal intellectual myopia that kind of all of the enabling class of the status quo are the people who are the prime beneficiaries of it. So they're the sons of bitches who get the pay, they get the paychecks and get the pensions, and get the salaries from the state. They are high-bred technocrats, basically, bankster class, and obviously the politicos. So, and they're very well educated, very, very well educated people, very specialized in law, economics, or, whatever it is. And one can almost feel sorry for them because that lot The liberal, intellectual, enabling class of the status quo are the most lost of all. The good humans of the soil, the good people of Middle America, the pulse of humanity in Mozambique and Myanmar and, you know, Cambodia, all the people of the middle, you know, pulse of the people, humanity, that is the quanta that is emerging right now as an unstoppable, epochal force. And it will shake as it stands up, blinking into the daylight of this new earth, which it's doing already. We'll just see all of that malevolence kind of just be shed like the cobra skin that it is. And then it'll look really very soon as a bad dream, because that's all it was as well. Let's not take it too seriously. You know, Mark Phillips is actually with us in this conversation. You know, my beloved grandma is with me in this conversation. She's in the blood in my bones. And so, you know, it's just all theater. It's theater. It's temporal, 3D, kind of yawn, you know, theater. We need to start. I love what Kathy said about just find the joy, find the laughter, find the happiness, find the love, because that's the stuff. It's see the world through the eyes of a child. Get back into that space, especially at this, you know, this turbulent time. We must begin, each of us, simply to step back, get back to the soil, drink those telluric energies in, open our hearts and minds to the dielectric, limitless, universal quanta, and step into our fucking orgasm, step into our bliss, step into our own ecstasy and euphoria. That's my gift to me. I don't seek permission for it. I'm certainly not going to fill out a goddamn form to get it. I'm not going to pay anyone for it. I'm not going to mortgage anything to get it. It's mine. But I need to just be in the now sufficiently to know that it's mine. And what Kathy said earlier was probably the seminal piece. To have no fear of death is freedom. That's what smells like freedom. Because when you've seen it, when you've smelt it, when you've when you have died and been reborn to it, then what is there to fear? And the option is to find tremendous joy and humor with this theatrical production. I
love that childlike idea, because the children are so pure, and they have no fear of death. They just got here. They're all excited to live and experience everything. And it's such a beautiful aspect of life that we need to bring all of us back to that childlike wonder and that freedom from fear, and to realize, you know, you were saying how the people who voted for Biden were there was actually so very, very few that they had to steal the election. I mean, just blatantly steal the election, because they couldn't even fake the numbers of people this time. I mean, because people are waking up, and there's fewer and fewer and fewer who are actually buying into that dark illusion anymore. And it's so encouraging to see that we are such a vast majority, and that we're in the process of being able to reclaim our joy, and to be able to live our love, and to be able to reestablish peace back in the world. It's very exciting.
Oh, it is. I mean, when you hear the concept like the second coming of Christ and this and that, do you feel it's more something emerging through, you know, humans that have awakened, and it becomes just a part of the greater, you know, kind of collective, as, you know, a Christ light energy in the collective, or do you ever feel it would be like, you know, a figure, or how do you kind of relate to that whole kind of terminology of like a second coming, since we're talking about, you know, into the Christed light?
Semantics, you know. Yeah, absolutely. It's the whole movement that we're in right now for reclaiming our strength of spirit and the innate love we are, which, you know, semantically, it's all the divine. It's all the absolute. It's the beauty of what we're moving into. So as a second coming, I definitely can relate to that concept in those terms. Waiting on anybody to come and save us, though, is an entirely different thing, because looking at it from an outside expectation, like the aliens should come and save us, or some person should come and save us, or something like that. This saving grace is within us. This is something from within that is emerging. But to wait for it from the outside is what I see some people mistakenly doing, and therefore looking outside themselves for that rather than realizing that it's within us all. And that aspect of waiting outside of self, it was like waiting for justice, waiting for reclamation of the ability to stop these perpetrators from harvesting and raping our children, and the horrors that they're imposing on us all. It's up to us, and we have to start, but first by reclaiming that second coming from within and living that. Then make a difference in your own backyard, in your own community. Start paying attention to the people who are in positions to help the while we are still having elected officials. We need to restore elections on local levels on up. Do it where we can pay attention to it. Hands on, right where we can start making that difference. Environmentally, we don't need to impose controls on everybody. We need to just start appreciating nature again, taking care of it. It's so against my being to just, litter even, because nature's so pristine and it's so beauty, and just respecting that, having the respect for these aspects of life again is what's going to empower us to reestablish justice and stop this criminal few from imposing their darkness on us. This morning when I woke up, and I was so excited for this opportunity, and it was just another bright new day, and I looked out the window and there was a deer in the yard, and it was like, oh my gosh. But Cherokee sacred lore, that means the deer energy, if there's a deer around you like that, it's reminding you of compassion. And I love these kind of aspects that we can get from history like that. And it was like, oh yeah, compassion. Compassion is what the world is lacking right now. They're lacking compassion for each other. They're lacking compassion for themselves, to stop tolerating these impositions. They're lacking compassion for nature and in animals and the beauty that's around us. When we reestablish our compassion and dare to care and love what's around us, life becomes precious again. It's also why I have so many animals around me. I always surround myself with pets because they're unconditional love. And if life ever just gets too intrusive with its issues and everything else, the animals bring us right back to that place of unconditional love, free of life's conditions, unconditional love, unconditional peace, unconditional joy. Live in the love and the peace and the joy that we are. It's all so simple when we realize that we've been buying into an illusion and allowing a handful of dark forces to control us. We don't need that anymore. It's time for that to go. This is the second coming. This is our turn. This is our time to shine our light. One shining of light just dissipates darkness. We just need to start shining our light and stop buying into the illusion of darkness. It's over. It's done.
So, Kathy, I want to ask you a question, if I may, and that's connected to just the business of being a human. We were all humans in a human world, and we were assailed variously by things that come up to haunt us, and memories that come back and need to be resolved, and different archetypes that come and beat us around the back of the head. Do you feel at any point these days rage? Is there any undiluted rage? Do you see that coming back into your belly these days at any point?
Only love can come to me. The energy that I am is the energy that I'll take in. So I'm not going to fuel theirs with rage. It's horrible seeing the border reopened to human trafficking. That's extremely disappointing. From looking at it in the moment that it occurs could be outrageous, were it not for the fact that I choose to rise above the moment, take a higher view, and realize that we had 4 years of being shown the reality of human trafficking. That truth came to light. We had 4 years where the border was closed, where we were able to see. It's not to shut people out. It's to stop the human trafficking, stop the drug trafficking, stop the invasion of darkness on us. We've had that to the point now where we can see it with eyes open. People are going to realize the horror that is being imposed on us by allowing for the free flow of drugs and human trafficking across our borders again. That was so much my life's experience under MK Ultra mind control, being part of the human trafficking operations and being trafficked across the borders. And the people that were involved in it are the same ones who are opening the border back up so that they can get back into that again. When I bogged down in the reality of that, which it is a reality, truth makes us free. We got to face it all. But also to take on the whole picture and realize that people are awake and aware to that fact now. And because of that, and they see that, that's where we're going to have the ultimate positive change and take just quantum leaps forward in our own spiritual evolution to be able to stop the darkness from invading. I believe in the power of love. I believe in the strength of the human spirit. I believe in humanity because that's their innate being. I believe in humanity to make the difference there. So rather than bog down in that moment, I'll take a higher view, and then that allows me to stay mobile and to continue making a positive difference in light of the most powerful force in the universe, which is love.
Beautifully stated. Thank you. Lovely.
Yeah. Anything, kind of coming through that's really important for you guys to address and, discuss and talk about?
Well, I wanted to ask Kathy about why she's not wearing a tinfoil hat, because I did read her bio. I thought I had to do this. I know more about your backstory, Kathy, than most people live, and I'm honored to know that. But I couldn't resist reading Laura. They've been pretty polite to Laura, the Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
You got away lightly, Laura. But Kathy, this is just for sheer humor, if you don't mind. Can I tell you what Wikipedia say about you? Do you mind?
Conspiracy theorist?
Well, yeah, because I want to look at this piece here. So, you're an American conspiracy theorist, okay, and author who claims to have been a victim of government mind control, called Project Monarch, which you allege were part of the CIA Project MKUltra. O'Brien made these assertions in Transformation of America and Access Denied for reasons of national security. Those 3 books, 2 books, both of which there's 3 books, right? Or 2 books?
Yeah.
2 books.
Yes, yeah.
Which you co-authored with Mark Phillips. According to scholars, and this is the bit here, according to scholars, there is no credible evidence for O'Brien's claims, and there are numerous inconsistencies with her story. She claims that Project Monarch caused her to develop multiple personality disorder, but during alternate personality episodes, she has photographic recall. Transformation of America has been accredited as originating one of the most significant and extreme mind control conspiracy theories, and her claim of links between satanic ritual abuse and MKUltra have influenced popular conspiracy culture. So there you go. You're a cultural icon. Religious and political scholars have criticized O'Brien's claims for their lack of any supporting evidence. Now, they don't name any religious and political scholars there, but they go on to say that David Robertson characterized them as symptomatic of baseless moral panic. Shame on you, Kathy. And noted that no one has ever been prosecuted of such crimes, nor has any corroborating. Okay, you twat, let me explain something to you, Mr. David G. Robertson. Lean in, pal. You don't get to just round up presidents and prime ministers and heads of state, okay? That doesn't happen. We've had a bunch of sociopathic presidents in the Oval Office leading up to Donald Trump and subsequent to Donald Trump. Okay, that's part of the orchestrated chaos. So that's got no bearing at all as to whether or not Kathy is telling the truth. It says here, Kathy, according to scholar Michael Barkin, and I'm naming this son of a bitch because we've got a huge network and I think we should give him a little infamy here. Scholarly and journalistic treatments of MK Ultra, he says, make no mention of a Project Monarch. Barkin describes O'Brien's account as sensational even by the standards of conspiracy literature, and notes that even black helicopter conspiracy theorist Jim Keith considered it fraudulent or delusional. And Jody Dean cited O'Brien's claims as an example of conspiracy theorists' tendency to excessive leaps of imagination and willingness to deviate from common sense. Okay, so again, all of those literary thugs, if they just lean in here for a moment. I'm interested as to why it is that you've never been prosecuted, Kathy, for any of your claims.
National security was invoked on my case. The fact that the perpetrators I named invoked national security, they're not going to invoke national security on a conspiracy theory. They're going to invoke national security on truth they don't want out there. So it's been a form of censorship all along. And it was one, when it was very first invoked, and I learned about it, it upset me tremendously. And yet Mark explained that it would actually help to keep us alive, to be able to survive, because that would mean that it's just the nature of how truth rises and is able to come out or whatever. So with national security on the case, I was not able to obtain any kind of justice. And at the same time, with national security on it, I cannot be prosecuted either. So it's that particular thing that ended up becoming both a positive and a negative in so many ways, but is also extremely validating of my testimony in Transformation of America, who was involved in it, and what their ultimate purpose is, how MK Ultra mind control works. And whoever didn't realize that Project Monarch is a part of MK Ultra mind control obviously does not have a high enough clearance to research properly. So, you know, the truth is absolute. It's out there. Truth never goes away. And sometimes it takes a long time to emerge. I wish sometimes that national security hadn't been invoked so that maybe my voice would have been louder and I wouldn't have been censored. I don't know, maybe if people had that truth, we wouldn't be experiencing the kind of mind control being imposed on the world today. But who knows? We have to just deal with what has been done. And the fact is that national security has suppressed truth for a long time, but it has allowed for me to still speak out with the absoluteness of what I have documented in Transformation of America. That testimony for Congress was validated by very concerned members of intelligence, very concerned members of Secret Service, and especially by concerned members of U.S. Customs. And all that was validated is because there was such an overwhelming amount of proof that national security was invoked on it. Wikipedia is not going to change what they're saying, even though it's totally illogical to, you know, call me a conspiracy theorist. But people are going to say what they're going to say, because until they wake up and know their own truth, they can't embrace someone else's anyway. So
Right.
I consider my speaking out to be seeds of truth planted. And when people are ready for that truth, they will start seeing it around them and be able to gather their strength of spirit and make a positive difference in the world in light of the truth that they know too.
Beautiful. I just want to ask you one other thing, if you don't mind, Laura. I just want to ask another question of Kathy, and that's connected to one archetypal figure in your backstory, Kathy, that to me, 10 years ago, longer than that, when I became familiar with your story and really started looking into it, and you helped me do a lot of back research into some of the leading political icons at that time. Because of my access to leadership over 20 years, I was able to corroborate firsthand with people who were very close and knew the individuals you had unmasked and spoken about, and those individuals corroborated to me on more than 2 occasions, corroborated absolutely what you were saying, that that was the complex, that was what was going on in the basement. That was when I became truly compelled in your story, because I used your story as a litmus with people I knew in leadership level to say, hey, have you heard of this, this, and this about so and so? And they went, oof, yes, keep your voice down. That's the stuff that really sort of spiked my interest. And one of the characters, which I personally find the most venal, was Senator Robert Byrd. Is that a character that you now look at as someone out of a kind of book that you read about, or do you still have a visceral kind of complex connected to that individual and the harm and the injury that was wrought against you by that individual? And that was one of the longest standing individuals in American politics.
Very much a part of the New World Order and imposing it. You know, the ultimate justice for me is positive change through public awareness, and the dedication to justice that you live has just been so encouraging and empowering to me in so many beautiful ways. And I realize that until people understand that there are dark forces in this world and that want to control and dominate, and that our human brains are vulnerable to that domination unless we are able to realize that we drive that brain with our own strength of spirit, and knowledge is our defense against mind control. These are what's going to make it impossible for another Senator Byrd to step in and impose mind control to the extent that he did for the purposes of ushering in this world dominant slave society, New World Order, that he was so much a part of, very much connected into the whole money aspect of it and how that money was being used for bad, to further the New World Order agenda. It's like the human trafficking that I was thrust into with him as my owner. He was acutely aware of the human trafficking operations and used that money to fund the New World Order as well. So Senator Byrd was a major part of how we ended up in the position that where the whole world is facing today. But to just put it on one person, that agenda, then people will say, "Oh, well, he's dead now, so we don't have to worry about that anymore." It's the agenda that we need to pay attention to, and it's the one that we need to be aware of and not allow it to happen anymore. Senator Byrd, what he did to my daughter is so outrageous that for me, knowing my daughter was abused in any way was the ultimate control over me. It was the ultimate trauma. It was the ultimate horror, the ultimate fear. And Senator Byrd, what he did to her is unforgivable in every way. But when I say unforgivable, I have my own definition of forgiveness, because people say you got to forgive your abusers. And it's like, no, I don't condone what they did. If I forgive them, would be to condone it. At least in my mind, that's how I see it. I understand why they did what they did. And with understanding, it gives me a more clarity of view. And I understand that Senator Byrd did what he did out of his own greed for power and for control, and his own greed of feeding off negative energy. And the important aspect that everyone needs to realize from those like Byrd and Bush Sr., they need to realize that this kind of dark force can sneak in on us. Senator Byrd said that people don't think to look for this kind of criminal activity. So he was acutely aware of what he was doing. And that good people don't think to look for this kind of criminal activity. Well, once people are aware, which they are now, and they're seeing it and they're starting to see it all around them, we are going to be looking for it from now on. So that one truth that he spoke is going to empower people for generations to come to know that the kind of dark force that he existed in this world um, has no power over us if we don't allow it. I didn't
Right.
make that choice when I was a little child because my victimization began at infancy. But even so, they could not make me one of them. Senator Byrd couldn't make me like him in any way. He was a nonstop trauma because he's a polar opposite of all the energy and the love that I am. And so the love that I live and the love that I am is so much greater than the hate and dark force that he was,
Right.
that I'll just continue shining my light and not be pulled down in his darkness.
That's just so beautiful, Kathy. But did any of those big players, did any of those characters that you had to interface with for all those years, did you ever sense that any of them were not happy about their role, that were compromised and were not enjoying that role, but were compelled nonetheless? I mean, the Bob Hopes and those kinds of master players. Did you ever see the look of trauma in them and humanity in them and see that they were hating the role and the function?
Not as much as I would have, that in retrospect, I would hope that I could see, because I've examined that thought a lot, and I can't find it because they're feeding off negative energy, and therefore they are negative energy, and it's hard to determine if they have any kind of regret or adverse feeling at all. I can't make that kind of judgment in that regard because they're just such a completely different force. Yet I've always maintained the hope that someone would gain one more piece of their own life's puzzle and have, a realization that could wake them up into becoming a part of the light and a part of love. But I'm not sure how that can happen. It's an interesting thought and an interesting thing that I've examined for a long time. I just wish that it had happened. I used to wish that maybe somebody like Bill Clinton would wake up and make a positive difference with what he knew and expose the darkness that he experienced and the darkness that Hillary Clinton is, because there was almost a spark there. Of all of the people that I was exposed to under MK Ultra mind control, there's no question that President Reagan should have been able to be free to think, to make that change and make that stand. If anybody could have, he would have. And it's not that he could even think to regret for the situation that he was in, because when the assassination attempt on him happened, George Bush Sr. took over his administration from that point on. Mind control is a sliding scale, and there is a level of undue influence and mind control that was exerted on Ronald Reagan. What would Ronald Reagan have done if he had been in control of his own administration? I am quite confident that he would not have allowed global education into our school system to change the foundation of knowledge that our children were being fed so that they would eventually march to the New World Order, which is exactly what happened in our education system. I don't think he would have done that if he'd have had that choice. I'm not sure what he never tortured me. He never physically harmed me himself in any way. He was always very, very kind and loving and gentle. And even his physical presence had a different vibe to it than George Bush, for example. And yet there's no way that Reagan could have had a regret unless he had been able to think free and realize the level of control that had been exerted over him. If he had been able to write out memory, to be able to write out solutions, if he had been able to heal with like the methods that I'm so fortunate to have healed with. He may have done things very, very differently. If he had been able to heal, if he had had that freedom, if he had been free to live the love that he is in light of his own life's purpose and his own path that he would have chose, it could have made all the difference in the world for all of us. But it didn't happen. So like Michael Jackson, who didn't get to know their own truth prior to their passing, we're in this position in this world now where if we could all just have compassion and realize that there is levels of undue influence on people all around us and wake them up to that reality and impart the truth that makes them free. Ultimately, I think that's the powerfully transitional times that we're living right now, and it's up to each and every one of us to open up and help others see the truth, because ultimately that is going to make the difference in this world.
Beautiful. Well, we've got about 2,500 people who've stayed with us all the way through, which is fantastic. And yeah, thank you to the audience and sending such beautiful comments in. A lot of people loving up on Laura, a lot of people loving up on you, Kathy. Wow, I feel very blessed to be sandwiched between the two of you. Laura, over to you.
Oh gosh, it's incredible to be with you guys. Yeah, I mean, so there seems to be sort of like the handlers or the ones that are, the abusers, the ones that are, like Senator Byrd. So when you kind of look at the CEOs of like some of the social media platforms, or you look at certain celebrities or people out there, can you easily gauge who might be under sort of the spell of the mind control and who might be the abuser or handler? I mean, because kind of looking at there being a difference between somebody who's like owned versus someone who's just a part of that ring that is holding that level of enslavement over others. I mean, do you see just kind of a mixed bag when you look, and can you kind of determine who's who in that regard?
Yeah, it's the more you know, the more you see. And mind control is a sliding scale. And we all formulate our thoughts, opinions, and actions based on what we know. We need to know our knowledge base has been deliberately altered. It's been altered in the education system. We see it being altered around us through controlled media that is long since been a voice of the New World Order. With truth being suppressed as much as it is through that controlled media, it's that narrative is being controlled more and more. And our knowledge base continues to be altered, because knowledge is our defense against mind control. Truth makes us free. And to understand that aspect allows for us to see beyond who is asserting those controls. Is it their knowledge base that's got them wanting to control the knowledge base of other people and impose it on them? Because when a person is operating through like compartmentalized memory, or where we've all been divided, and it creates this lack of compassion, this lack of interaction, this lack of inner communication in our brains, and a lack of inner communication among each other. It stops that ability. It creates like this self-centeredness, and they can be so self-centered that they want to impose their view on everybody else because it's all they know. They don't realize that there's so much more to know in this world, and they're silencing and limiting their own capacity for expanding into the beauty of what other people might have to say that could expand their minds, enlighten them to the power of love and the power of truth. So there, with that sliding scale, if we just stop judging that aspect and persist in bringing truth to light with all that we are and living that truth and shining that light, we have a much better chance of being able to positively impact and expand the thinking of those whose knowledge base has been controlled. And then at the very tippy top of those who have altered that knowledge base and controlled that knowledge base is a very dark force. That dark force is something that we have allowed to control us because they've done it. They've taken control so slowly over time now. They've been doing it my whole life. And I am certainly not young. They've been doing it my whole life. And I've seen what their plan is and how it's been unfolding, and they've been making it happen. Well, people started waking up in spite of it, and their plans started altering. So they had to come from other directions and use different controls and come at us from other. They've lost control over us because their control over us was an illusion all along. The strength of the human spirit and the power of love can overcome them just the same way light overcomes darkness. And it's time for us to realize our own power and start living that instead of giving in to these people. That way we'll be able to help those who can be helped and stop those who are asserting abuse and control over our world.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, the hope is exactly what you said, to stop those that are pushing this agenda, so that those that are victimized by them or being, you know, used or manipulated or blackmailed can feel that they're not going to just enter a world of hatred because of the role they played, that there's actually a greater sort of love and understanding for maybe that compromised position versus, you know, the ones that are really pushing that control that need to be stopped. So
it's like MK Ultra mind control was creating these people that were being violent in society and creating mass shootings and everything. And the purpose of that was to traumatize the nation and also to make us think that there was all this hate in the world, when in fact there really isn't. It was mind control all along on that aspect of things. But have you noticed now that mind control of the masses, that mind control masked as a virus has taken over? We not only don't have the flu anymore or the common cold or anything like that, we don't have these mass shootings anymore because that trauma is not being needed right now. When you consider that what looks like this pervasive, violent hatred, darkness is actually just a form of mind control, then we can realize that it can be overcome with love. It can be overcome with compassion and understanding of what mind control is. In PTSD Time to Heal, it not only provides the keys where a person can reclaim their own free thought and expand their thinking into living their life's purpose, it also has information to be able to reach out and help other people. The first step towards doing that is recognizing it around us and being able to take the positive and necessary action that way, out of loving compassion rather than out of any kind of fear or hatred.
Oh God! So I know we're coming up to the end of the 2-hour segment. Is there anything you want to share, Sasha, or anything that we didn't bring up that you find would be really important to?
No. I'm very satisfied. Look, I could talk to both you and Kathy for many hours, and at some point I would like to speak more. And I want to understand more of the mechanics of the last 100 years of history, and especially post World War, Second World War. My synthesized potted history of how evil really kind of locked in and loaded and brought about MK Ultra and all the rest of it is connected to, I think, the Hopi prophecy, and the Hopis, of course, in their sagacity, told us that the white man had the great privilege of the fire element and could take the fire element forward, which he did, and we did. We're three whiteys here. I'm a half whitey because I'm a sub-Saharan. I'm a white African, so I claim that part. But we took fire forward. We took it through the Crusades. We we really wrought monotheistic Catholicism onto the planet, and we desecrated all of the other black skin, brown skin, yellow skin, red skin peoples for 500 years at least of blood sports. Blood sports is what it was. It was empire. That was the fantasy of archonic forces playing through the imperial crowns of Europe, and all of the perversity of too much power, too much privilege, too much appetite. And that leads to more and more, the need for more and more adrenal rushes. And so there's a kind of natural tendency for perversity to emerge out of the consolidated pyramids of power. But then white man took fire to an even worse extent and ended up, courtesy of Oppenheimer and Einstein, in splitting the atom. There is no more diabolical misuse of fire than splitting an atom in a 3D temporal universe, where you simply rip the fabric of time-space and then allow the unleashing into the temporal realm of all manner of diabolical lower elemental cloud intelligences and demonic intelligences. And so the roundabout, the story of your own great-grandfather obviously ties into this, Laura. And one can almost look back at him and see him as being the last of the gentle handlers of the status quo, going so far as to warn the world of what was to come if we weren't very seriously apprehended ourselves. And of course, that was a fail, in the same way that JFK also, in that extraordinary speech he gave at, I think, Columbia University shortly before he had his brains blown out, he also tried to forewarn. And all the rest of them up until Donald J. Trump, the champion of the revelation of human trafficking and ritual satanic abuse, until he came along, all of them, including, by best accounts, that smooth cowboy, Ronald Reagan, were all somehow co-opted into that tapestry of witchery and evil. Desperately sad, obviously. Catholic Church has been up to its knuckles in blood for half a millennia, so we don't even need to look at that. The crowns of Europe, the same thing. But the sadness about Capitol Hill and about America is that was really supposed to be the real human experiment of the homogenizing of all of the best of humanity, all faiths and cultures, all the pioneers and the pilgrims that forged the American. So that was supposed to really be the deliverance from hegemony and from evil empire and from blood sports of old and all of that Canaanite bullshit. And yet, obviously, the serpent stole with great stealth into the citadel in Washington, D.C., and overturned and overthrew the founding fathers and the original blueprint of what America ought to have been. And now we're seeing the end of a long play of poker by the Sabbatean satanic Luciferic hand through America, having caused more harm and destructivity to the American people actually than anyone else, in my view. If you talk about the meta cult programming, the meta poisoning of people, of good people, and yet what we see emerging from within that orchestra of chaos is we see that Christed Adamite that brings the three of us together in this conversation. So I'm happy that we discussed those various key elements. I'm still wanting to speak to Kathy again on some more. I think she holds keys, certain keys. So I also think you do, Laura, certain keys. And I think that the more we convene just in this very simple space of human love and connectivity, we're the ones who are forging the new emergent paradigm. And I'm very blessed to be with both of you this evening. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sasha. What beautiful words. And what would you like to share before we close, Kathy?
Well, mind control that's being imposed on everyone, it disrupts life's harmonious flow. There's no ability to be in that harmonious timing, the synchronicities, the beauty of the things that come together in life when we're in that flow. Mind control totally disrupts it, and that is it truth makes us free from that, rises above it, and then we get to live the love we are. And it's just such a wonderful way to live every single day, in celebration of freedom, in celebration of love, and in celebration of life synchronicities and beauty. And I'm so glad that we all got to do this together today. It's such a huge convergence of truth and positive energy. And, like I said, Laura, the whole world needs a hug, like you and I first had. And it's just time for love to prevail. And
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes. And just, the power of nature, like you were talking about. I mean, it's like we got this matrix web or net that links into the mind, but this whole other glorious nature exists around us that really illuminates our soul nature and helps us to tap into these greater abilities. And the truth frequency is what nourishes our body, helps us to upgrade, helps us to overcome anything. So we can look fear squarely in the face and realize that there's something beautiful on the other side of it, which is a part of reclaiming our true treasures. So in the face of fear, we can actually remind ourselves in that discomfort that there's more to be discovered, instead of getting all constricted and giving that power away. Because awakening, really is about remembrance and absolutely love, and just reminding one another that that is what is real between each other, and we don't need to be pit against each other anymore. And that refusal to play into that game is everything. And I really, really fully believe and feel and know that this is just going to catch on, because like you said, Sasha, that's the true virus, the love energy, and it has the power to transmute all of this and crush these dark technologies and all the distortions that come along with it. Because if the mind's no longer engaged in it, it can't feed, it can't siphon life force, it can't harvest, which is what batteries it up. I mean, it wouldn't exist unless we were giving it the power like we talked about. And so, that is the Christ of light. You both hold it like in the most amazing ways. I can't tell you how much I love and respect both of you. And it's just been so incredible to be in your presence. And I look forward to creating more together. And just thank you for just holding that, leadership that inspires and activates. It's a whole new level of, it's just, it's what stimulates the awakening, because it inspires. And it's the opposite of control. It's all about the sovereignty and mutual love and respect. So
indeed. Thank you, Laura. Well, what I'd very much like to do, and baiting both of you delightful ladies on live stream in front of 2,500 people, so you can't really say no, is I'd like to consider in the days ahead at some point doing a live stream symposium, or where we actually invite other survivors and so-called victims. We don't like that word much. It doesn't have much thrall, but I think it would be very helpful to invite survivors and victims to just simply put their questions forward. I know I can speak to certain elements from a very circumspect way, because I've studied I've studied very closely what I call the hyperdimensional physics aspect of blood sacraments, and of the kind of heinous Babylonian, mysterium cult bullshit that goes on. So I'm somewhat conversant, and even in some ways possibly expert in elements there. Kathy is the perfect subject to speak to, what it truly takes in the middle of that theater to transmute and transcend. And I think you've also got a tremendous, a healthy spiritual psychoanalytical gift there, Laura. So if you guys are good for that, at some point, why don't we just set up a pretty intensive marathon and allow people to simply ask the questions? So there'll be no interacting between us, just targeting the stuff, and get down to the nuts and bolts of a lot of people out there who really need also to join consensus with us.
absolutely.
perfect.
Yes.
Well, we'll plan that. And to the 2,500 people who joined us tonight and the tens of thousands who will see it by tomorrow morning, and the hundreds of thousands who will see this within a week or two. Thank you. God love every single one of you. Christed beings, thank you for being with us. Laura, love you to death. Kathy O'Brien, love you to death. Thank you.
Oh, love you both so much.
Love
Thanks
you.
everybody for tuning in. Take care.
Bye.